They thought they had captured a mere human, a primate with a gun, a grunt from a backwater planet. But in less than 48 hours, alarms echoed through their ship, engineers screamed as lights failed, and the walls seemed to whisper in their own language, "He's still alive." What they didn't know is that this soldier wasn't trained to follow. He was trained to adapt, to become the storm when the map ends. This was no ordinary prisoner. This was a Terran Special Recon operative, and they just made the worst mistake in galactic history. He woke up restrained, cold steel clamped around his wrists, head pounding from the stun blast. The last thing he remembered was the convoy ambush on Titan's outpost, the blinding flash, and then darkness. Now, blinking in the harsh green light of an alien ship, Sergeant Alex Rain slowly flexed his fingers. Not out of fear or confusion, but calculation. The air tasted metallic, dry. The gravity was lighter than ice. The hum of the reactor 3 floors below told him one thing. This was a Fexery vessel, one of the warships that had been terrorizing Terran outposts for months. They'd been targeting elite units lately, trying to dissect what made humans so dangerous. Poor bastards. The guards outside his cell were tall, armored in chitan-like plating, but slow. Predictable. They had numbers, sure, but what they lacked was the one thing Alex had in spades: experience in asymmetric warfare. They didn't know he could dislocate his thumb to slip free from restraints. They didn't know he'd memorized the ship's patrol patterns within minutes. And they sure as hell didn't know he'd already pulled 2 screws from the bench in the wall and fashioned a lockpick. Within hours, Alex was loose. And he didn't run. No, he stayed hidden in the vents, the pipes, the dark corners of their own ship, listening, learning, planning. He watched them argue over dissecting him. He listened to their officers mock his kind. Fragile creatures, one said, evolved on a death world but so sentimental, so weak. Alex smiled at that. Sentimental, sure. Weak. They'd see. When the lights went out on Deck 7, no one noticed at first. When the security drones stopped responding, they blamed interference. But when the body started showing up, throats slashed, weapons gone, cameras melted, they panicked. Internal lockdowns activated. Too late. Alex was already in their command center. Alone. Unarmed. But with fire in his blood and war in his bones. He didn't need their weapons. He used theirs against them. He rerouted their oxygen supply, triggering hallucinations on half the crew. He hacked their translator systems, making officers hear betrayal in every command. He released the caged beasts in their specimen hold. Chaos followed. And in the middle of it all, he walked calmly down the main hall, scared, bloodstained, eyes cold. Not a prisoner. Not even a soldier anymore. A force of nature. By day 3, the Fexery tried negotiating. They offered him his freedom, wealth, even a command of their own ships. He responded by broadcasting their classified data across human networks and rigging their main drive to explode. He sent one message before vanishing. You wanted to understand humanity. Lesson 1, we don't break. We bury. Weeks later, the wreckage of the Fexery ship was found drifting near a neutron star. No survivors, except one faint escape pod, empty, drifting toward Earth. Some say Alex never made it home. Others say he's already back, working in the shadows. Watching. Preparing. Because now, the galaxy knows. Humanity may look fragile, but when you corner one of us, you've just declared war on the entire species. Somewhere deep beneath the Martian surface, in a hidden black site known only to the top echelons of Earth's defense accord, a lone figure stepped through the decontamination fog. The guards at the checkpoint snapped to attention as retinal scanners confirmed his identity. No questions were asked. No greetings were given. Just a whisper that echoed down steel corridors long after his footsteps had faded. His back. The man who had single-handedly brought down a Fexery warship was now marked in galactic records as a Class 9 threat entity. Even among human command, his file had been redacted. Red ink. Need-to-know basis. And no one ever needed to know. But Alex hadn't returned for medals. He hadn't come back for revenge. He returned because he saw something on that ship, something buried deep in the Fexery data cores. A map, a location far beyond known star charts, and a list. A list of names. Not just soldiers, scientists, diplomats, colonists. Thousands of missing humans, long believed dead. But they weren't dead. They were being taken, studied, prepared for something larger, something ancient. The Fexery weren't working alone. For the next several months, Alex operated under Ghost Protocol. No official record, no missions logged. But across the frontier colonies, rumors began to spread. Alien slavers turned up dead with Terran knives in their hearts. Pirate ships found hollowed out, their crew missing but their surveillance logs showing a single human-shaped shadow moving through fire. An underground resistance grew across the galaxy, not made of soldiers, but of former slaves, escaped prisoners, and those who once feared humans. Now they rallied behind a new name whispered in bunkers and back alleys, the Ghost of Titan. Back on Earth, the military brass argued over whether to bring him in or let the myth grow. Some feared the attention, others saw it as a weapon. But deep down, they all knew Alex had become more than just a man. He was a message, a living warning to every race that thought they understood Earth, that thought humans were just soft-skinned mammals playing at war. They didn't understand that our true strength wasn't in weapons or numbers. It was in our refusal to kneel, in our ability to adapt, survive, and when needed, bane everything to the ground. But this wasn't over. One day, deep in a derelict orbital station orbiting a long-dead star, Alex found what he was looking for, a sealed vault written in an ancient alien dialect. Not Fexery, older, and inside it, a cryopod, human, female, and awake. She whispered one word before collapsing in his arms, Project Seraph. Alex's heart skipped. That word had been buried decades ago, top secret even during Earth's darkest days. If it was true, if the Seraph Project was real, then the war they thought they were fighting was just the surface, and humanity was already laid to a much larger battlefield. Now Alex had a new mission. Not just survival, not just vengeance, but revelation. He had to uncover what the galaxy had hidden. He had to find the ones behind the experiments, behind the disappearances, behind the myth of Earth's extinction. And most of all, he had to wake humanity up, because something was coming, something even the Fexery feared. And in the shadows of collapsing stars and forgotten ruins, one soldier moved like a ghost, unseen, unstoppable, a mistake the galaxy would never make again. The woman in the cryopod wasn't just human. She was enhanced, not cybernetically, but biologically. Her DNA was mapped with sequences Alex had only seen in redacted Terran experiments, gene patterns that shouldn't exist. She healed fast, too fast. Her vitals stabilized within minutes, her eyes fluttering open, irises glowing faintly silver. She looked at him, not confused, not afraid, but with recognition. "Rains," she whispered, her voice raw from stasis. "You're not supposed to be here." His mind reeled. She knew his name, but he had never seen her before. Before he could respond, the station shook with distant explosions. Something had followed him, something that had no interest in survivors. As he pulled her up, alarms blared in broken alien dialects. Containment breach. Organic anomaly detected. Whatever this place had been, it was never meant to be found. They ran, dodging collapsing steel and bursts of plasma as the facility tore itself apart. Behind them, shadowy figures moved, tall, sleek, silent. Not Fexery. Something worse. Synthetic, precise, ancient. Machines, perhaps. Or Weiss, organics designed by something far older than any known species. They barely made it to the surface, boarding a stolen skimmer just as the ground caved in beneath the station. From orbit, the entire planetoid cracked open like an egg, revealing massive structures buried beneath. Not ruins, factories. Dormant, waiting. As they escaped into the black, the woman turned to him. "Project Seraph wasn't a weapon," she said quietly. "It was a warning." She handed him a data shard pulled from the vault. On it was a symbol, an eye wreathed in flame, and coordinates. Coordinates far outside any known galactic charts, deep into the void verge, a place Terran navigators marked as unreachable. Alex knew what it meant. The galaxy had been playing a game of empires and invasions, all while something else had been watching. Something that had seen Earth rise, fall, and rise again. Something that now considered humanity not a threat, but a variable, uncontrolled, unpredictable, dangerous. And now that he'd unlocked Seraph, now that he'd survived what should have erased him, humanity was back on the radar. Earth Command was reluctant to believe him at first. Until the signals came. Dozens of long-dead satellites blinking online. Ancient emergency relays activating across sectors. Ghost stations transmitting coordinates, each one pointing to something lost, forgotten, or buried. A pattern. A trail. A countdown. And at the heart of it all, humanity. Not the center of the galaxy, but the trigger of whatever was coming. But time was short. The factions across the stars were already moving. The Fexery had gone silent. The Ilor, once aggressive slavers, began evacuating outer colonies. Entire empires were disappearing without explanation. Worlds left intact, but empty, as if life had simply stopped. Whispers of a final protocol circled encrypted channels. Ancient species spoke of the Reclaimer signal, a myth, they claimed, about a force that once wiped the stars clean when civilizations advanced too far. Now it had been reactivated, and all signs pointed to Alex Rains. He wasn't just a survivor anymore. He was the fuse, the anomaly, the man who walked into the jaws of an empire, baned it to the ground, and returned with forbidden knowledge. A soldier once built for war had become the key to a truth the galaxy had tried to forget. And as his ship entered dark space toward the void verge, the stars themselves seemed to shiver. Because this time, humanity wasn't coming to fight. This time, we were coming to understand what had tried to bury us. And if needed, to finish what we never knew had begun. The jump into dark space wasn't like hyperspace. It wasn't clean. It wasn't quiet. It was like falling sideways through reality, every atom screaming in silence. The human ship wasn't built for this kind of travel. Even with patched alien tech and dampening fields, the hull groaned as if the void itself were testing its resolve. Alex stood by the viewport, staring into the nothing, except it wasn't empty. Shadows moved out there. Shapes that didn't reflect light, only devoured it. The Seraph woman, who now identified herself as Elias Korr, sat in meditation, her skin faintly glowing, as if her body was sinking with some unseen current. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence alone kept the ship from disintegrating. After 6 hours of transit, reality snapped back, violently. They emerged not into star-filled space, but into a yawning darkness where even light seemed reluctant to travel. Before them loomed the destination encoded in Seraph Shard, a derelict structure the size of a moon, orbiting the husk of a dead star. It wasn't built by any species Alex knew. No markings. No architecture. It looked grown, not constructed. Curving towers, impossible angles, black stone that shimmered with internal pulses. Ancient, alien, alive. The facility, if one could call it that, responded to Elias's presence. Its walls folded open as she approached, forming pathways, stairs, platforms suspended over bottomless pits. It wasn't just reacting to her. It remembered her. Or rather, it remembered what she was made from. Inside the central chamber, suspended in a sphere of antlight, was a machine, or mind, a consciousness spread across dimensions. It called itself Epitaph. Not a being, but a memory, a guardian of the past. And what it revealed shook Alex to his core. Epitaph showed him the first war, a war so old even the stars were young when it banned. It wasn't between species. It was between life itself and what came before it. A presence, a hunger, known only as the Unmaker. Not a god, not a devil, but the end of meaning. It swept through the early galaxies, devouring potential, erasing futures. The only resistance came from a coalition of fledgling life forms who sacrificed everything to trap it beyond the veil of causality. But they knew it was only temporary. The trap required a key. Something unpredictable, evolving, dangerous. They left behind codes, seeded into the DNA of a chosen world. A world that would rise in chaos, survive extinction, embrace emotion, war, creation, destruction, love. That world was Earth. Humans weren't accidents. We weren't chosen. We were engineered as the last contingency, the final gamble. A species so stubborn, so resilient, so beautifully flawed that even the Unmaker could not calculate our outcome. Project Seraph had been Earth's attempt to rediscover this buried purpose, a secret mission by Earth's old shadow governments, long before first contact, to unlock the hidden strands in our genome. But they went too far. They triggered echoes of Epitaph's warnings. The galaxy responded. Earth was isolated. Invasions were launched. The Fexery were manipulated. pawns moved by something older, whispering from beyond the veil. And now, the veil was thinning. Epitaph's final message was simple: the Unmaker stays again. The countdown has begun. Only chaos can resist entropy. Only humanity can tip the scale. Alex looked at Elias. She wasn't just enhanced. She was the template, the prototype of what humanity might need to become. Not post-human, not a god, but a fusion of what made us terrifying and what made us beautiful. He didn't know if he was ready. He didn't care. Earth wouldn't be ready either. But if the stars were going to fall again, he'd stand in the fire and hold them up himself. They left the structure in silence. The stars outside had changed, some dimmed, others gone entirely. Something was moving across the galactic plane. Faster than light. Faster than time. Consuming suns. Unseen, but felt. And in its wake, silence. The ghost of Titan was no longer a whisper. He was a signal now. A call to arms. And the galaxy, whether it liked it or not, was listening. As they crossed back into charted space, it was clear the galaxy had changed. Systems they passed through were wrong. Stars pulsed in unnatural rhythms. Moons were missing. Whole sectors had gone eerily quiet. On the edges of sensor range, strange anomalies twisted reality. Time loops, gravity wells forming in open space, messages broadcast in reverse. Ships encountered ghost signals mimicking their own distress calls from the future. Whatever the Unmaker was, it wasn't arriving like an army. It was eroding the laws of the universe like rot under paint. Alex and Elias landed at Concord Station, a former neutral trade hub now turned refugee colony. Thousands of beings, from dozens of species, were crammed into emergency housing. Their worlds weren't destroyed. They were emptied. No wreckage. No remains. Just silence. Mothers wept over children that vanished mid-sentence. Soldiers stared at walls, repeating names like mantras. The terror wasn't in death. It was in forgetting. As Alex walked through the chaos, his presence caused whispers, then cheers. He didn't want them. He wasn't here to inspire. He was here to prepare. At a secret meeting beneath the station, a resistance council formed. Not of generals or admirals, but survivors, engineers, smugglers, outlaws, people who had seen what the Unmaker did and refused to let it happen again. Species that had once warred with humanity now looked to Earth for leadership, not because we were the strongest, but because we were the only ones mad enough to fight something that defied reason. Elias stood beside Alex as the resistance planned what came next. Her abilities were growing. She could sense the distortions before they happened. She claimed she could hear the Unmaker's breath, a deep, ancient rhythm echoing in the fabric of space. It was calling out to someone, or something. And more than once, Alex caught her gazing silently into empty corners, as if something was watching back. They didn't have time for fear. Alex initiated the Phoenix Protocol, a hidden failsafe buried in Terran deep code for moments like this. It sent a call to every dormant AI, every decommissioned satellite, every hidden black site across the remnants of Earth's old military web. They reactivated. One by one, old Terran war tech began waking up. Orbital cannons once meant to deflect asteroids now pointed toward the stars. Deep-buried bunkers flickered with light for the first time in centuries. Forgotten drones lit up their circuits and flew without orders, the last program purpose echoing through time. Protect humanity. Meanwhile, Elias decoded the next location from the Epitaph shard, a point deep inside a region called the Hollow Vein, where stars bent like mirrors and time fractured like glass. It was there, she believed, they'd find the Cradle, the last true remnant of the species that first fought the Unmaker. They weren't gone, they were hidden, sleeping, waiting for someone mad enough to reach them. But they weren't the only ones searching. The Fexery had returned, but different. Their ships were darker now, silent, their crews emotionless. They didn't speak. They transmitted, cold pulses of code, like echoes of old selves overwritten by something else. One of their fleets intercepted Alex's vessel in transit, their lead dreadnought broadcasting a single word across all channels: surrender. When Alex refused, the stars themselves twisted, and the dreadnought collapsed into itself without a sound, as if erased from history. The message was clear: resistance would not be fought, it would be unmade. But that was where they misunderstood humanity. We don't fight because we think we'll win. We fight because someone has to stand at the line and say, no more. So Alex didn't slow down. He didn't retreat. He rallied every soul willing to defy the void. He trained aliens in guerrilla tactics humanity had honed over centuries. He taught machines how to think like humans. Chaotic, creative, unpredictable. He sent sleeper agents into corrupted fleets with one mission: delay the tide. Slow it down. Make it bleed time. And when asked what they were fighting for, Alex said only this: for every child who dreams of stars. For every old song written by hands now dust. For every flawed, broken, beautiful thing this universe would erase. We will not vanish. We will become legend. And in the distance, on the edge of all things, the Unmaker stared, aware now, for the first time in eons, that something had noticed it. Something loud. Something alive. Something human. The hollow vein wasn't on any known star map. It couldn't be. Coordinates shifted, warped by gravitational anomalies no science could explain. Time rippled here. Ships grew old in minutes or looped a moment endlessly. Even light hesitated. The path to the cradle wasn't a straight flight. It was a test. And for days, Alex's crew faced visions. Not illusions. Echoes. Elias nearly broke first. She saw herself 1,000 times over. Child, mother, soldier, corpse. The cradle read her DNA, her memories, her potential, and forced her to confront every version that might have been. Alex wasn't spared either. The hollow vein showed him Earth burning, his squad mates dying, a future where humanity lost. Where he lost, he didn't flinch, because the truth was, Alex had already made peace with death. But what terrified him was something deeper. What if they won, and there was nothing left of who they used to be? At the center of the vein, the cradle finally revealed itself. Not a station, not a city, but a living moon, pulsing with golden veins of light, its surface covered in ruins of a civilization that looked human, but wasn't. The architecture was wrong. Too elegant. Too perfect. Elias touched one wall and gasped. They were us, she whispered. Or we were them. Inside, the truth awaited. The cradle was a vault of the first ones, beings who had engineered chaos into existence as a last stand against the Unmaker. Their greatest creation wasn't a weapon. It was a spark, raw unpredictability, seeded into the genetic code of one emerging species. Us. Humanity wasn't created to destroy the Unmaker, but to infect it, to become a virus within its perfect order. Our flaws, our creativity, madness, defiance, love, those were not mistakes. They were the payload. Epitaph's final fragment lit up, revealing the last step. Humanity must enter the Unmaker's domain. Willingly, because only within its impossible structure, its anti-reality, could chaos be delivered. The resistance balked at the idea. How could they send humans into something that unmakes thought, memory, self? But Alex already knew. He was going. And he wasn't going alone. Across the galaxy, humanity answered the call. Not because they were fearless, but because they were tired of being prey, of being the forgotten underdogs. Scientists, poets, farmers, hackers, orphans, soldiers, they volunteered. Not just Terrans, humans from Martian domes, Jovian drifters, old lunar cults, even hybrid colonials once shunned. The Unmaker had touched everyone. Now everyone would rise. As the fleet assembled, a last warning came. A being from the cradle, or what was left of it. A mind preserved across epochs. It spoke through Elias. You will not return as you were. You may not return at all. But know this, your scream will echo across the dark. And that is all the light we need. And so began the final descent. Alex led the Spear of Ashes, the first human vessel to breach the Unmaker's veil. The ship wasn't just tech. It was wrapped in fragments of the cradle, shielded by emotion-encoded drives, its weapons designed not to fire blasts, but to broadcast pure, unfiltered chaos. Human thought, compressed into waves, grief, rage, beauty, art. It was madness weaponized. The Unmaker saw them coming. It tried to rewrite space, to convince them they were alone, that Earth never existed, that they were simulations dreaming of stars. It failed, because inside the heart of that impossible domain, when all physics bent and language died, one voice cut through the silence. Alex's voice. Gritted. Broken. Alive. This is for life. This is for every species you erased. This is for chaos, for fire, for the storm you could never control. This is for humanity. And then the payload detonated, not with light, but with memory. The Unmaker, eternal and cold, felt something it had never known: confusion. The scream of a billion lives, of moments that should not have existed, love stories, betrayals, children's laughter, battlefield oaths, final breaths, all became weapons. The perfect order fractured. Not shattered, but cracked. And through the cracks, hope. Back in real space, the stars shimmered. Time stuttered. The galaxy paused. And from the heart of the Unmaker's broken domain, a signal returned. One word. One voice. One final message. Still human. The signal echoed across the stars like a heartbeat returning to a long-dead body. Still human. The words reached across systems faster than any known technology, carried not by light, but by memory. Ancient warships halted their patrols. Corrupted AI clusters flickered as if waking from nightmares. Civilizations that once considered humanity insignificant now stood silent, watching as the impossible unfolded. And somewhere, far beyond the edge of known space, the Unmaker paused. It had never been wounded, never been confused, never been interrupted. And now, something foreign had taken root in its structure. Not code, not mass, but meaning, emotion. The very thing it had unmade for eons now pulsed inside it like a virus. One seeded by a soldier from a small blue world no one had expected to matter. Alex Rains. His ship, the Spear of Ashes, was never seen again. But survivors from other resistance fleets swore they saw it, burning gold, with tendrils of the Unmaker itself clawing at its hull as it dove deeper into the core. No distress signal. No cry for help. Just that final message. Some said he died in the breach. Others said he became something else, trapped in an echo between time and entropy. Half human, half memory. But all agreed, the moment Alex entered the Unmaker's heart, the galaxy changed. The strange distortions began to fade. Ships lost in dead space reappeared. Stars that had gone dark pulsed again. Refugees reported dreaming of Earth, before it burned, before the wars. Not nightmares, but memories they'd never lived. Children born on alien stations suddenly spoke words in extinct human languages. A ripple of Alex's scream, of his sacrifice, now flowed like a second gravity, bending fate toward resistance. Elias Korr returned from the breach. Changed. Her body bore fractal scars that shimmered in patterns no scanner could decipher. Her voice sometimes echoed with Alex's cadence. And in her dreams, she walked through a quiet forest lit by dying stars, always toward a figure in worn Terran armor, who never turned around. She became the Cradle's new speaker. Not a weapon, not a leader, but a reminder. She warned the galaxy that the Unmaker still existed, still vast, still beyond understanding, but no longer invincible. Because now it feared something. Not fleets, not machines, but a species born from chaos, raised in struggle, tempered by heartbreak, and sharpened by defiance. Humanity. Back on Earth, the signal was received loudest. Plants once thought extinct bloomed again. Old machines activated with no input, broadcasting fragments of the final battle. On a quiet hill in the Andes, a little girl who had never left her village sat up in bed and whispered, "He made it." Governments fell. Empires fractured. And from the ruins, something new emerged. Not a Terran empire. A Terran memory. The ghost of Titan became more than a myth. His name, Alex Rains, was etched into every star map, every child's book, every resistance wore him. His story told around fires and in orbiting libraries alike. Not for glory, not for worship, but so that no matter how far humanity traveled, no matter how strange the future became, they would always remember. One man, one ship, one scream, still human. Years passed, not peacefully, not quietly, but differently. Galactic space, once divided by territory and fleet size, now pulsed with something stranger: unity. It wasn't perfect. There were still skirmishes, betrayals, greed. But woven through it all was a story that refused to die. Of a human who walked into the heart of entropy and screamed it awake. Entire academies were founded on his tactics, though no one could fully explain how a single man took down a war fleet from inside. Theories ranged from sabotage to psychological warfare to myth. And yet, the impact was undeniable. Species that had never allied with each other now did. Research stations once guarded by automated kill switches now shared data freely. Why? Because they had all heard the scream. And more importantly, because they believed. And then, the Cradleborn began to appear. Children born after the breach. Human, yes, but touched by the echo. They were different. Not in appearance, but in intuition. In depth. They spoke of things no one taught them. They understood systems before being shown. One Terran girl on a lunar outpost rewired a station's dying reactor at age 3. With no tools, no help, and no fear. A Martian boy walked through a psychic storm unharmed, whispering to the winds in a dead language no one recognized, except Elias. Elias Korr, now known only as the voice of the Cradle, traveled from system to system, visiting these children. Not to test them. To listen. Because they weren't anomalies. They were answers. The result of a scream that didn't just hit the Unmaker. It hit existence itself. Humanity had cracked open a path between life and something older. And that path had responded. These children, these Cradleborn, weren't soldiers. They didn't need to be. They saw the threads of systems not in code, but in feeling. They repaired what others couldn't. Rescued dying AIS from madness. Healed alien minds broken by trauma. Not through power, but through empathy woven with entropy. A living paradox. They were chaos that soothed. But peace is never permanent. In the far edges of map space, new anomalies began to stay. Structures, massive, black, and bone-silent, appeared on the edges of dead systems. Not built. Grown. No life aboard. No signals sent. Just pure, cold presence. When approached, these monoliths did not attack. They listened. And when they heard the voice of a Cradleborn, they responded with song. Not in any language, but in harmonic tones, like mourning wails in deep time. The Cradleborn understood. These were unbound archives, data vessels from before the First War. Older than the Cradle. Older than stars. They held warnings. Coordinates. Names. One name appeared again and again, carved in the ancient tongue of the universe itself. Reigns. Not Alex. Reigns, the concept. The scream. The defiance. What had once been a man was now a variable the galaxy could no longer control, predict, or bury. The Unmaker had tried to erase him, and instead, it had accidentally immortalized him. But the monoliths also showed visions of something returning. The Unmaker, adapting. It had not been destroyed, only disrupted. And now it was learning, watching, listening back. The Cradleborn could feel it, not with fear, but with sorrow. They knew it was coming again. Not soon, but someday. And when it did, it would come not as a devourer, but as an inviter. A voice offering peace, silence, stillness. A seduction. A choice. And that was what terrified them most. Because the next war wouldn't be fought with weapons. It would be fought with meaning. With truth. With identity. With memory. With the question, why stay human when you could be perfect? But somewhere, in the neural archives beneath old Earth, a recording pulsed to life. Not video. Not voice. Just a line of data, left by Alex Reigns in the final seconds of the breach. Tell them, never mistake silence for surrender. Tell them I saw what waits in the dark. Tell them, we are still human. And we never choose perfection.